Hey guys, I'm back with another video, and today I'm going to be talking about my first pregnancy. Prior to finding out that I was pregnant, I had been feeling extremely sick, but I thought nothing of it because I had never been pregnant before. By the way, this was in 2016 that I found out I was pregnant for the first time, and I just ignored all the symptoms. Like, I ignored it like a goofball, right? So I was throwing up, I was having horrible morning sickness, and still thought nothing of it. I was just like, dang, I have a really bad virus going on right now, because I have had a lot of stomach problems, so I get very easy food poisoning. But it wasn't food poisoning. And I was like, oh my god, I think I need to go to the doctors. And my period was going to be due. It was due in a week. I went to the restroom, and when I wiped, I was spotting. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna get my period, I'm fine. Because my fiance kept telling me, are you sure you're not pregnant? And I'm like, I'm not pregnant, I have a stomach flu, calm down, damn, chill. And I didn't listen to him, but in the back of my mind, I was like, I am feeling kind of weird. I've been having this stomach virus for a few days now, and it won't go away. And I'm in the restroom, I'm like, okay, my period's coming, we're all good, right? No, I spotted that very same day 2 tiny little dots, and I even like sent a picture to my fiance because he was at work. I didn't have work later on that day, and I was like, I told you I'm not pregnant, I have my period's about to come, like, this is my period. And he's like, okay, cool, whatever. The very next morning, I put on a pad and everything, and the very next morning, nothing. And I wake up and I'm like, I don't feel wet or anything. And I go to the restroom, and sure enough, I'm not bleeding at all. I wipe and everything, no blood whatsoever. And I'm like, is it because I've been working out? Because I'm a very active person. So I was like, no, I'm fine, I'm not pregnant. But I started kind of freaking out by this time, right? Sorry, my baby was sneezing like crazy. 2 days pass, 3 days pass, 4 days. By this time, my period is a week late. And I'm like, I'm not pregnant. How could I be pregnant? I'm not pregnant. I was in complete denial. And my fiance goes, go take a pregnancy test, or I'm gonna go buy you one and I'm gonna make you take it. And I'm like, fine, let's go. You're right, I haven't been feeling good, I keep throwing up, I have a really bad interaction with food. I smell something and I feel like I gag and I feel like I'm gonna throw up. I was like, you're right, let's go. But I'm not pregnant, my period's just late. We go, buy a test, take it, and within seconds, dark as positive. And I'm like, oh my gosh. My fiance was there, and he's like, I told you were pregnant. And I was like, shut your mouth, boy, like, leave me alone, okay? So I'm freaking out, I'm crying, right? And I'm like, you were right, oh my gosh, I should have listened to you. What are we gonna do? I need to find a doctor, I need to go make sure that the baby's in the right place. Fast forward, we go to a clinic that's very close to our house, and they take a test, and sure enough, it comes out positive. And that's the place where I told you guys that they do ultrasounds for free. So they're like, do you want an ultrasound? And I was like, yes, please, yes, that sounds amazing. So I go in, I'm super nervous. Obviously, I've never had an ultrasound done before. Um, they do it over my belly, and you could see the sac perfectly. And I'm like, oh my God, I really am pregnant. And it was a feeling that I cannot explain. Then they had to do a vaginal one because he couldn't see everything, because uh, I was barely 6 weeks pregnant when I found out that I was pregnant. And sure enough, you see the little sac, but that's all you could see, right? And they're like, oh, when was your last period? And I'm explaining to them, and they're like, okay, yeah, the baby's just too small. Come back in a week from now, and we'll do another ultrasound. I'm like, okay, thank you. I go back in a week, and when I go back, I see just a sac. I've never been pregnant before, so I'm just like, oh my gosh, the baby's still there, because it looks a little bigger than the first time. And I'm all excited, but the nurses are starting to look worried, and I'm looking at them because they're making these faces. And then they even tell me that that maybe it is the baby's too small, but by this point, my period, the last day of my first period, and how far along I was not adding up whatsoever. It was way off. And they're like, I think you should go to your doctor, or go to the hospital if you don't have a doctor. I didn't have a doctor at the time because I was still very early on. And they're like, or go to the hospital and get an ultrasound done. 3 days before I had gone to the doctors or to the ultrasound, I had a little blood clot come out. I sent my mom the picture because I was freaking out, but I wasn't bleeding. It was just a little blood clot that came out with a little bit of blood. And I was like, oh my gosh, Mom, am I miscarrying? I'm freaking out. I'm like, but I'm not bleeding that much. Like, what's going on? And Mom's like, calm down. It's okay. It's happened to me multiple times. My mom has 5 kids, by the way. And she's like, it's okay. Maybe it's just from your last period. And since you're pregnant now, your body's getting rid of that. That's what happened to me. You're okay. But, ask your doctor when you go to your doctors. And I was like, okay. So when they say that, I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm freaking out. And I told them, well, you know, the other day I had this little book come out, and I showed them the picture, and they're like, yeah, you definitely need to go to the hospital to figure out what's going on. I go to the hospital, and I'm freaking out, and they tell me, they do an ultrasound, they do blood work, but my blood work is still high. And they're like, no, the baby's just small, but maybe you're miscarrying. And I'm freaking out. I'm bawling. Of course, my mom's there, my fiance's there, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna lose this baby. And I'm freaking out, but in the back of my mind, I still have hope that the baby's okay, because I still feel pregnant. I'm still having all the symptoms of being pregnant, and I still look pregnant. And I'm just like, the baby's okay. I'm crossing my fingers, hoping that the baby's okay, that there's nothing wrong with the baby. So 2 weeks pass. I go to my doctor's appointment. I had already had I had a doctor by this point. I go, and they do blood work, and my blood work came out higher than it was at the hospital. So that's a good thing, because my HCG levels were increasing, which is good. That's what you want to see. The baby was big enough, was supposed to be big enough during this time, where if they use a fetal Doppler, you could hear the baby's heartbeat. They use one, and you can't hear the baby's heartbeat. So by this point, things are adding up. But the doctors do an ultrasound, and in the ultrasound, you see the sac a lot bigger than the first time I got an ultrasound done, and you see a little dot inside. But the sac was a lot bigger than the baby was. So they measure the sac sac shows that I'm a lot further along than the baby. He is showing that it's 7 weeks, but my sac, the sac is showing that I'm a lot further along than what the baby's growth is. So by this point, I get more blood drawn. I go to the hospital again. I was in and out of the hospital in this pregnancy, you guys, all the time. It was pure problems, one after another with this pregnancy. I was a mess, and so was my fiance. So I started feeling very sick, and the doctor decided to do one last ultrasound and one last blood work. And they do an ultrasound. The sac is a lot bigger than last time. The baby is still the same. And in my blood work, because I continued going to get blood work every week, and in my blood work you saw that it was dropping. So my body was finally starting to miscarry, but I still wasn't bleeding, and my stomach was still growing, and I was still getting more symptoms of a pregnant woman as they get farther along. And by this point we end up finding out that the baby's gone, but my body still thinks that the baby is alive and the placenta is what's growing. But by this point the placenta is dead, and I have to quickly get it taken out because it could kill me and I could get a horrible infection because of it. And everyone was surprised that I did not get a horrible infection, that I ended up being in the hospital for weeks because of it. I was feeling sick. I was starting to feel sick and get the symptoms of the fact that there's something dead inside of you and you need to get it taken out. But I was still healthy. I thank God I didn't get sick. I didn't get hospitalized. And so long story short, the doctor tells me we could do a DNC, but for those of you that don't know, a DNC is a surgery where they take out the baby, and they clean everything up, and they have to put me to sleep. But they explained to me that the baby is still small enough where she even showed me how small the baby is, and she's like, where your body could miscarry on its own if you take these pills. You insert them up there and you wait, and within a few hours you'll miscarry. So I decided to do that, to go with the pill route, because of the fact that I wanted to hold my baby. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to hold and mesmerize the fact that I lost this baby, yeah, but at least I'm gonna be able to have a moment with what's left of my baby. Does that make any sense? I wanted to be able to mourn on my own, and so did my fiance. So we went down that route. 2 hours pass after I put the pills. Nothing. 3, 4, 5 hours pass, and this is supposed to work within 5 hours to 6 hours. It's a really quick process, and I was getting all the symptoms of the pills, but I wasn't opening at all. And I fainted. I don't know how many times. My fiance says that I fainted at least 7 times on him. I was throwing up. I had horrible diarrhea. I know, TMI, but I had horrible diarrhea. I was throwing up at the same time. I was fainting. I was sweating. I was horrible. It was a mess, guys. And I wipe 7 hours after I get it. I wipe, and I'm barely spotting, like super light pink. And by this point I should already be bleeding. You know, my body should already be taking out what's inside of me. And no, It gets so bad where I'm having trouble. I'm in so much pain. I'm having trouble. I'm having contractions at the same time, and I'm having trouble not fainting and keeping my fluids inside. I'm extremely dehydrated by this point. We decided to go to the hospital. I go to the hospital. I stay there 3+ hours. So by this point, it's already 10 hours since I had the pills, and I'm there. My mom's there. My fiance's there. They gave me pain relievers for the pain, and that kicked in right away, thank God. And by this point, I get to the hospital and I'm bleeding heavy now. I'm like if I was on my period. I go to the restroom. I feel the urge to go use the restroom, and I go. By this point, I'm finally able to walk because I was in so much pain and so dizzy and fainting so much that I couldn't even get up. And I decide to get up. My fiance goes with me. I go to the restroom, and all you hear is a big splash. I think about it, and I'm like, I didn't poop. I didn't have the urge to poop. What's going on? And I'm like, oh my God, the baby. And they had given me a cup to put my urine inside of it, and by this point the little cup is full of pure blood mixed with urine. And I go to wipe, and as I look down, I see the sack. Now I have tears running down my face, and my fiance is like, what? And I'm like, it's the baby. And he's like, nuh-uh, really? And I was like, yeah. And I get this little bag that they had given me to put the pee inside. I get it, and I scoop it up, and I'm just looking down, holding my baby, and I'm bawling. I show my fiance. We're just looking at it, and we're just in shock. I'm sorry. I look at him, and I'm like, it's our baby. I didn't think I was gonna cry. By this point, we're both bawling our eyes out. We're a mess. I was in such shock that we put the placenta and our baby inside the toilet, and we just slowly flush it and walk away. And then, because we wanted to take the baby home with us to bury the baby, but we didn't want the doctors. I knew that the doctors needed it. Well, I didn't know that the doctors needed it, and I didn't want the doctors to be like, you can't take it home. You can't take the baby home, because it's just the placenta and the tiny little baby inside of it. So I go outside, and my mom's like, what is it? Why are you guys crying? And I'm like, I miscarried. It was a baby. It came out. And she's like, really? And I took pictures of it, and I was like, yeah, look. And I show her, and then the doctor comes in, asks how I'm feeling, and I'm like, oh, here's the urine sample, by the way. And he's like, oh, you're bleeding a lot. And I was like, I think I just miscarried. And he's like, really? And I explained to him what happened, show him the pictures, and he's like, oh yeah, you definitely just miscarried. He's like, I need your mom and your fiance to step outside so I can make sure that your cervix is closed. They step outside, He checks, and sure enough, my cervix is closed. He cleans up little pieces that were in outside, obviously not inside my cervix. And I see him take out big little chunks, and there's just blood everywhere because I'm bleeding heavily. And I get discharged, and they tell me obviously that I can't have sex, and that it's very risky to have to get pregnant right after a miscarriage. And they explain to me that it's not my fault and all that. And we go home. It took me a very long time to get over it. I don't think you ever get over it. Things like this, not to mention it was also my first loss. Thank God no one in my family has ever passed away. And my fiance, some of his family members have passed away, but in mine, none have. So it was my first loss, and for it to be my first child obviously hurt me a lot. I don't think you ever really get over it. You just learn to live with it. At first, my fiance and I wanted to have a baby right away. We wanted to try, but we knew the risks of it, and we knew that we weren't in the situation for us to be able to support a baby. We wanted to be able to a better financial situation. So, and we knew that if we were to get pregnant right away, potentially the same thing could occur. So what I had happen to me is what's known as a missed miscarriage. For those of you guys that don't know, it's when the baby dies inside of you and your body still thinks you're pregnant. But for all of you moms that have miscarried or have gone through something similar to me, just know that it gets better. A year and a few months later, I now have a handsome son, my rainbow baby. It's scary though. I'm not gonna lie, it's scary getting pregnant after having gone through something like that. I was scared every day that I was pregnant of losing him. I feel like miscarriage is something that people avoid talking about, but it's something that happens a lot more than what people know or make it seem. I know a huge amount of women who have had miscarriages, but you'd never know because no one talks about it, and it doesn't really hit you how big of a problem it is, and it needs to be put out there until it happens to you. My best advice to moms who have gone through it is don't give up, don't give hope. It hurts, I'm not gonna lie, it still hurts me to this day. I've learned to live with it, and know that your baby's in a better place, and that your baby would want you to be happy. Your son or daughter would want you and your significant other, or you, to be happy in general. I know it hurts because you carry this little human inside of you, regardless of if it's a fetus or an embryo. It's a baby. To me, it's a baby. A baby's a baby. And just know it gets better, and that you're gonna get through this. And if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. You're more than welcome to message me. But yeah, guys, this is my video of my first pregnancy, and something that I feel people need to talk about it more. But yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video, and I hope you guys have an amazing day today. Don't forget to love yourself and love each other, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.